Manos a la obra, señor Freeman. Manos a la obra. No quiero decir que se haya dormido en los laureles en el trabajo. Nadie se merece más un alto en el camino. Todos los esfuerzos realizados habrían sido en vano hasta que... Bueno, digamos que otra vez ha llegado su hora. El hombre adecuado en el sitio equivocado puede cambiar el rumbo del mundo. Despierte, señor Freeman. Despierte y mire a su alrededor.
No te he visto subir.
I'm Gabe Newell, and welcome back to Half-Life 2. It's been a long 20 years. I'm Gabe Newell, and welcome back to Half-Life 2. It's been a long 20 years since its release. In this anniversary update, we've tried to respond.
Physics objects. It might be hard to remember it now, but
Manos a la obra, señor Freeman. Manos a la obra. No quiero decir que se haya dormido en los laureles en el trabajo. Nadie se merece más un alto en el camino. Todos los esfuerzos realizados habrían sido en vano hasta que... Bueno, digamos que otra vez ha llegado su hora. El hombre adecuado en el sitio equivocado puede cambiar el rumbo del mundo. Despierte, señor Freeman. Despierte y mire a su alrededor.
No te he visto subir. No importa cuántas veces me trasladen, nunca consigo adaptarme. Bueno, fin del trayecto.
I'm Gabe Newell, and welcome back to Half-Life 2. It's been a long 20 years since its release. In this anniversary update, we've tried to respond to as many of the community's requests as possible. And while this might not be the absolute #1 request from fans, I often hear how much people would like a commentary mode, so we're excited to finally make that happen. Not only was it a challenge to remember many of the details of Half-Life 2's development, but it's not easy to crack open decades-old computer code and wonder what the hell you were thinking way back then. Along with the dev commentary, we've cleaned up a bunch of old bugs and tried to leave things in better shape than we found them. And at least this time, we had the luxury of knowing how things turned out in the end. To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the use key again. And please, let me know what you think. You can reach me at gaben@valvesoftware.com. Thanks, and have fun.
Physics objects. It might be hard to remember it now, but back when Half-Life 2 came out, small objects in games, like these bits of trash, were usually static, as in they didn't really move, or if they did, it was in a very simple way. If you were lucky, they might break apart into some sprites if you hit them. One of the goals for this initial train station section was to really make it clear to players that these kinds of things were properly, physically, actually being simulated in Half-Life 2. They could be picked up, dropped, thrown, broken, moved by other forces, you name it. Here we're starting with just a small thing, showing that trash is being blown by the arrival of the train, or, more specifically, an invisible volume that's triggered by the player leaving the train.
Train station. The beginning of a Half-Life game has a big job to do. We have to introduce players to a new world while teaching them how to interact with it. Players need to quickly grasp what's happening, who the key players are, what threats they face, and how they fit into it all. Above all else, it has to be as fun and interactive as possible. Nailing this takes a lot of iteration and play testing, especially on the small moments that make up a bigger picture of the game. In this section, we'll highlight some key moments, game design problems, and a few play tests where things didn't quite go as planned.
Metro cop shoving citizens. We've only walked a few feet and we're already got problems to solve. We're introducing the Metro cop, an enemy that eventually we're going to ask players to kill, and giving you a glimpse of the world they're stepping into. It's a simple, clear moment that shows the relationships between the Metro cops and citizens, and by extension, the player. At the same time, we decided to reinforce the existence of the core physics simulation, showing the way in which NPCs can casually interact with objects in the world. Seeing something like a suitcase knock into another and dislodge was pretty novel back then. These moments at the train station, where we combined multiple goals, were the most successful. They felt natural, like the game wasn't pausing just to teach you a lesson.
Bienvenidos a Ciudad 17. Habéis elegido u os han elegido para trasladarse a uno de nuestros mejores centros urbanos. Yo apreciaba tanto Ciudad 17 que decidí establecer aquí mi administración en la ciudad.
Sweeping Vortigaunt. Another key moment of storytelling and another nod to the physics system. Here, we're showing how Vortigaunts fit into this new world, which is a big shift from their Half-Life 1 role as enemies. Like so many moments in Train Station, the Sweeping Vortigaunt came from our constant hunt for ways to show characters interacting naturally with the physics system. Why just tell players Vortigaunts are friendly now, when you can show one casually sweeping the floor and knocking around some simulated objects? Nothing signals, hey, don't shoot me this time around, like someone willing to tidy up.
Bienvenidos a Ciudad 17. Habéis elegido u os han elegido para trasladarse a uno de nuestros mejores centros urbanos. Yo apreciaba tanto Ciudad 17 que decidí establecer aquí mi administración en la ciudadela amablemente proporcionada por nuestros benefactores.
¿Solo ibais vosotros en ese tren?
Llamar a Ciudad 17 mi hogar.
Citizens. When it came time to design the human citizens of City 17 and the world outside the city, we chose to include a variety of races, ages, and genders. This not only provided narrative context for the Combine's enslavement of all of humanity, but it was also important to us that anyone playing the game could see themselves represented in the resistance, with everyone on Earth united against the Combine. While we found a number of candidates to use as reference in creating these citizens through our daily lives and connections, we ultimately resorted to advertising in the Seattle Times classifieds to reach the desired range of faces that we'd envisioned.
Bienvenidos a Ciudad 17. Habéis elegido u os han elegido para trasladarse a uno de nuestros mejores centros urbanos. Yo apreciaba tanto Ciudad 17 que decidí establecer aquí mi administración en la ciudadela amablemente proporcionada.
Natural storytelling. To achieve our world-building and storytelling goals throughout the train station, we needed a natural way to deliver dialogue without it feeling too gamey or requiring tutorials. We noticed players often approached NPCs to get a closer look, so we turned that into an opportunity for the NPCs to acknowledge the player and deliver their lines. This kept interactions low-key, which was essential since the citizens aren't exactly too cheerful or lively. The simplicity of this approach also aligned with one of Half-Life's core storytelling goals, making the narrative responsive to the player's interest. Some players want to dig into every detail, while others just want to know what to do next. Giving players control over how much story they want to engage with, without it blocking progress, is a goal we always try to maintain in a Half-Life game. Plus, the less complicated a feature is to implement, the more of it we can include.
No bebas agua. Le ponen algo que te hace olvidar. Ni siquiera recuerdo cómo llegué aquí.
Así que ya hayáis venido para quedaros o vayáis de paso hacia lugares desconocidos. Bienvenidos a Ciudad 17.
Se han llevado tu maleta también. No podemos seguir permitiendo esto.
Muévete.
Hago lo imposible por seguir.
Día 14, código 4. Vamos.
Early tech planning. Shipping a game always teaches us a lot. We finally get to find out which choices we made were good ones and which were ones we should do differently next time. Half-Life 1, when we sat down to start thinking about what kind of sequel we could build, we had all kinds of player feedback to digest. From it, we tried to build a master list of things that Half-Life 2 was going to focus on. We didn't try to design a specific player experience. Instead, we found it more useful to approach the question from a technological standpoint. Black Mesa's security guards and scientists had worked well. What could we do if we pushed it really, really hard on characters? We liked our interactive storytelling. What could we build that would allow us to do even more of it, and a greater variety? The exploration and interaction with the Black Mesa was compelling to players. Maybe a physics system would allow us to take that further. In all these areas, we tried to imagine the best version of it could look like years in the future, and bulk solve from that a set of technological steps that might get us there.
Storytelling. Creating a sense of immersion was a core principle in our approach to Half-Life 1's storytelling, and it led us to the self-imposed constraints of never, or at least very rarely, taking control away from the player and of keeping the player's avatar silent. These limitations made storytelling more challenging at times, but we felt it was important to stay with them for Half-Life 2. Our hope was that by maintaining these principles, we'd push ourselves to explore deeper, more interactive storytelling.
para quedaros o vayáis de paso hacia lugares desconocidos, bienvenidos a Ciudad 17, un lugar seguro.
Vamos. Segundo aviso lanzado. Atrás ahora.
Actividad en ubicación. Centro de entrada de personal 6.
Primer aviso, lárgate. Quieto, quieto. Tú, ciudadano, ven conmigo.
Bienvenidos a Ciudad 17. Habéis elegido u os han elegido para trasladarse a uno
Tratarse de un
nuestros
error.
mejores
En una
centros
tarjeta de traslado normal, como todo el mundo.
Servicio 18.
Characters. In Half-Life 1, security guards and scientists could best be described as archetypes, not individuals. They were abstractions of characters that matched the visual fidelity we could achieve at the time. But as our technology improved with Half-Life 2, we saw an opportunity to move beyond abstractions. The increased visual fidelity of the character models, combined with improvements in animation, made us believe we could focus on creating individual characters, people you would actually care about. We allowed ourselves to write real dialogue and have characters deliver it in a way that felt realistic enough for players to not think about them as pawns in a video game, and hopefully propel our narrative forward. In 2001, a couple of years into development, we were energized by Japan Studios' Eco. Directed by an animator, it blew us away with its reliance on characters as the key connection to the player, giving us the courage to keep pushing forward.
¿Necesitas ayuda con este? No, está bien. Atrás. Captain Pitido en lectura de estabilización. Sí, necesitaré un poco de intimidad para esto.
Ahora. Sobre esa cerveza que te debía. Soy yo, Gordon. Barney, de Black Mesa. Siento haberte asustado. Tenía que disimular por las cámaras. Estoy trabajando en secreto con Protección Civil. No puedo tardar mucho, sospecharán. Voy retrasado dando palizas a los ciudadanos.
Sí, Barney. ¿Qué sucede? Estoy en mitad de una prueba decisiva.
Perdona, pero mira quién está aquí.
¡Madre de Dios! ¡Gordon Freeman! Pensaba que me avisarían.
Sí, y yo también. Estaba a punto de coger el rápido a Nova Prospect.
Bueno, Barney, ¿qué hacemos?
Lo estoy pensando, ¿vale?
Alex está por aquí en algún lugar. Seguro que sabe cómo traerle.
Bueno, mientras no se acerque a los controles, todo irá bien. Mira, tengo que cortar. Ya nos arriesgamos bastante.
Muy bien. Gordon, me alegro de verte.
Vale, Gordon. Vas a tener que ir tú solo al laboratorio del Dr. Kleiner. ¡Jo, tío! Justo lo que me temí. Entra aquí, Gordon, antes de que me descubran.
Blocking tutorials. At times, we need to be certain the player has learned something, and the standard method, at least in game development, not in life, is to trap them behind a gate of some kind, where the player must demonstrate their knowledge to be able to continue. We try to disguise these gates as something natural, so it doesn't feel like the game has come to a halt. Of course, time, resources, or the environmental context itself can make that tricky. In this case, we needed to teach the players how to move objects, so a simple stacking puzzle seemed like the best solution. We tested more complex designs, but they ended up being less effective at teaching the actual thing we needed the player to learn.
Blocking tutorials 2. There are two failures of note in this tutorial. First, players can break it by tossing all the boxes out the window, which is obviously not great. This leaves them stuck and unable to continue, which we consider a game-stopping bug that must be fixed. A clean solution would have been to tweak the window or crate sizes so that the player could fit through but not the crates. The problem was that we really only caught this problem late in development, and making even a simple change like that can have unpredictable game-breaking consequences, and right before launch no less. Also, this issue was purely theoretical. We'd never actually seen players do it. Our playtests of the design space had gone smoothly, with players learning what they needed and moving on. So changing the room's design this late in the game could have disrupted that success in ways that we couldn't foresee. So we opted for a more conservative fix rather than something elegant. If you're curious, try tossing all the boxes out the window and see what happens.
Blocking Tutorials 3. The second failure in this tutorial space is a case of misteaching, where we accidentally teach the players something we didn't intend. This can be hard to avoid without extensive playtesting, since the game is always teaching, even when it's not by design. We cover a more extreme example of this later in Train Station. Some cases of misteaching are critical to fix, like if the player learns the wrong way to use a weapon or interact with a common element of the game. But this one was more subtle. While teaching players to move objects, we also taught them to stack physics objects to escape a space. Normally that's fine, except we don't deploy that puzzle later in the game, and teaching something irrelevant just clutters up their mental toolkit and makes it harder to readily keep useful things in mind later on. Worse, stacking objects to escape the play space become a problem later on, something we had to actively prevent in multiple areas. With so many physics-based objects in the game, blocking this behavior without putting ceilings everywhere wasn't really an option. In the end, we hoped players wouldn't overthink this early lesson, and when playtests showed players getting stuck later on, we made sure not to remind them of it.